Thank you again, and I'm actually privileged to be on this show this morning while we await our senior guest, Mr. Alphonsus Zeon, my counterpart at Millennium Challenge Account. I will, try to give you an overview of what the Millennium Challenge Account is. So it all begins with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is a U.S. government entity that has a mission to reduce poverty by economic growth. The U.S. government established an organization that gave monies or grants to countries that need to, assistance with money as far as economic development concerned. But it's a very selective, competitive selection process. The countries, first of all, has to meet several indicators, about 20 of them. But once you are, there are 20 indicators that has to be met. But if the organization meets 11 of the 20, including in-country control of corruption, good governance, and development of human resources, then you are selected and given the opportunity to present a proposal. But first of all, you have to do an economic constraint analysis of what's binding on your development. So in Liberia case, the team was established and Liberia was given the opportunity to do an economic constraint analysis, and the team noted that Liberia needed sustainable and reliable electricity and good roads. So the project proposal was submitted and approved, and as a part of that approval process, the country now gets to establish what is called the Millennium Challenge Account. So the Millennium Challenge Account is actually the Absolutely. In fact, we're in our second year of the compact. So since 2015, Millennium Challenge Account-Liberia was established, and by way of meeting the indicators, and Liberia was absolutely put amongst the many countries that the United States government has given the grant to. So Liberia was given $257 million on these two areas to establish and develop its electricity and roads infrastructures. Yes, so once that is done, the Millennium Challenge account now comes to being, because the government, you remember, it's a compact, which is a treaty signed between two governments. From the United States government perspective, this treaty is being managed by a group called the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC. And from the Liberian government perspective, it is managed by the Millennium Challenge Account-Liberia. So there are several Millennium Challenge accounts around Africa.
And on the roads project. And the environment and social performance falls on the energy and the roads project, as Paul has been explaining. So on the energy project, we've been part of 3 other donors who've supported the rehabilitation of the Mount Coffee hydropower plant. Within that context, we're also doing sector reform within the energy sector. So we're talking about the creation of the Liberia Energy Regulatory Authority, what we call the LERC. We sort of providing support to the Liberia Legislature Corporation with a management services contract. We are also building an LEC training center. The idea is that if you build a Mount Coffee hydropower plant and energy or electricity is being generated, it's a question of how do you sustain it with the required manpower would be on ground to continue to provide support. So along that lines, we're building an LEC training center to sort of connect with TVET institutions, technical and vocational institutions, to be able to sort of draw upon them, like the BWR, the Booker Washington Institute, and train electricians, train managers, train financial people, train customer service people, who will then continue to provide sustained management for the Liberia Legislature Corporation. So that's the side, and there's several other layers. We don't have much time in terms of explaining the details. The road project is one. First of all, building the foundation for routine and periodic road maintenance across the country. The idea is that yes, and I'll come to that later. The idea is that we have done some efforts in terms of building roads in the country, but there isn't a national master plan, there isn't a national consistency strategy in terms of maintaining the roads. So as part of the compact support, we are providing a foundation for a master plan development, a 5-year master plan road maintenance program. There's been a draft already. It has to be adopted by the Government of Liberia. We're also providing capacity building training. We sort of collect data, collect information on what needs to be done in terms of informing road maintenance. And our road directorate has been able to provide support to train some people from the Ministry of Public Works and other agencies of government. So there's a lot taking place. These discussions are intended to sort of introduce the program itself, talk about the compact, but the details will follow when the experts themselves appear on these shows, sort of explain the details and the implications of the project. But that's the overview of what we're doing.
Okay, so before we go further, let's just summarize two things mainly involved: electrification and roads. Is that it?
Yeah, road maintenance.
That is correct.
Road maintenance. And it's important to make the clarification that our project is not building new roads. We are providing support to build a foundation that will help government provide sustained support for maintaining the roads throughout the country. So as we speak, there is the Liberia Renaissance Construction Company, which is collaborating with FOPI, the U.S. Transportation Center, and the Millennium Challenge Account, that is doing an assessment nationally about the road conditions. And the roads we're talking about are not all of the roads. We're talking the primary roads that connect county capitals. So it's not road construction, it's road maintenance. It has a policy angle, but it also has the physical implementation phase as well.
Okay, let's come back to Paul. You are the director of the environmental and social performance.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so tell us about a little bit about the role of this particular project and where are there specific areas that it's targeted to and to sort of accomplish?
So we are pretty much taxed with the. We are pretty much responsible to ensure the proper environmental and social impact and risk management of the compact, which goes from anywhere from risk mitigation, livelihood restoration, but we also have to ensure that the compact activities complies with the Liberian environmental protection laws and all applicable licensures and permits and certifications. So, for instance, my comrade Zeon just talked about some activity that has to be done. Now, the Millennium Challenge Account-Liberia, as we've initially described, has the ability to manage the construction of these facilities. Bringing you back to the energy project, we have several things under the energy project. One of it is to the energy project comprises of 4 interconnected activities. One of them is the Markov rehabilitation activity, which means that you come back and put a reservoir or a dam in place. And then the Markov support activity. The support activity includes any activity that has to do with helping to sustain the new facility or the equipment that has been put in place. And then LEC Training Center that Zeon talked about, and the energy sector reform. A lot of time the country has been running, on energy, but there has not been, actually reformation of that sector. So what the Millennium Challenge did now, was to put in place, in according with the treaty, a regulatory arm that's supposed to be there to manage all of the distribution of electricity that is being produced. So this energy sector reform and all of these activities are particularly a part of in the overall picture From the smaller perspective now, the environmental and social performance charge, we're doing activities that will actually improve the livelihood of the people after they've been upset by the construction. And some of what we begin to do in that community is to create development that will provide opportunities for the communities around the Hadro area. There's about 22 of them, yes, that were in the close proximity of the Hadro. 17 have been identified as directly impacted by the construction of the project activities in there. So what we as the environmental and social performance group will be doing is to ensure that our projects do not adversely affect, or our project activities do not adversely affect the communities. And where it does, we identify and put mitigation in place. And where possible, we reduce every adverse effect on them, and then create opportunity for them now to restore their livelihood. And some of what we've been doing has been to build infrastructure. So we had the small-scale infrastructure program. That program built bridges. One of them is about 300 meters, and another one is about 100 meters. That's about 300 feet and about 900 feet. And just because when you impound the river, the St. Paul River, it goes over the boundaries, and where people used to pass by foot path, now they can no longer pass. So because it is the project that increased the water volume, it is incumbent upon us now to create alternative route for the communities to use. So my project is to ensure that those mitigations and activities are in place. So we got a lot of community projects that we're going to talk about later around this show, and even say how the community can go about getting to be a part of implementing some of those projects.
Okay, so Alphonsus, is there a timeline, is there a duration to these projects, or just we'll see more and on? Is there a specific time that you have to accomplish these things?
The compact is a 5-year program. So it went into effect in January 2016. It ends the 19th of January 2021. It's a 5-year support program. One of the things we've talked about in this compact implementation is tremendous effort and deliberate effort also on the question of sustainability. When the compact comes to an end, what is left and how do we continue the gains that have been done on the compact? So we'll talk about the LEC Training Center, for instance. If we're able to build a pool of qualified technicians and managers who can be able to continue to support the operation and efficiency of the public utility, that will to a large extent sustain the progress we've made on the compact. Yesterday we ended a workshop on gender and social inclusion, for instance. And part of the effort we're making is to support existing gender units within the ministries of say, Public Works, Liberia Legislature Corporation, and the Ministry of Mines and Energy. These gender units will sort of continue to work with vulnerable groups, work with poor women, work with poor men, work with young people, work with war-affected persons, to make sure that they participate in road maintenance activities, for instance, to make sure that they take advantage of the economic opportunity provided by the electrification of the country. They're using electricity for productive means to empower themselves economically. So these are part of efforts to make sure that when the compact ends, there are institutions that are available within the sector of the government that will continue to build on what the compact has started. So yes, we do have the shock absorber in terms of sustaining the program when it ends. And that's why it's a government initiative, and most of these things are being done in collaboration with the Government of Liberia.
Of course, yes. Talking about maintenance and all of that is something that we've always had a problem with here in Liberia. Roads are built, but they're not maintained. In no time, we see all of the problems coming up, potholes and all of that. So that way you're coming in now to see how you can sustain those roads.
Right. So one of the things we've done under the compact, which is the CP, the the condition precedent. It's something that needs to be done before another thing takes place. We've passed the actual law, for instance. That law sort of says the vehicles, the weight of the vehicle, the weight of the vehicles that have to ply a certain route. Trucks that are very heavy in the layman understanding do some sufficient damage to the road. That law is specifically intended to protect the national highways and bridges that have been built. The enforcement authority is within the Ministry of Transport and the Liberia National Police, and the Ministry of Public Works has a role also. So what we're saying is that, these legislations have been put in place to ensure that as we move along in terms of road maintenance, we have the regulatory authority within the Ministry of Transport to ensure that our act is enforced, to ensure that tons of trucks that are very heavy don't pass on specific bridges so that they damage them. And people will have to continue to sort of provide safety awareness along the lines of ensuring that people abide by the rules and regulations to protect the national highway, to protect the bridges. So there are sustainability mechanisms that have been put in place.
Okay, now let's ask you about some of the basic challenges you've encountered in trying to go about doing your work. What are some of the difficulties you encounter?
Well, I wouldn't call them challenges. I would be looking at more, from the perspective of we could create some opportunities in improving in those areas. There have been a lot of misinformation on the nature of this compact, of this Millennium Challenge Account-Liberia's function. And in fact, the mere fact that we are in here this morning is to actually, give us the opportunity to tell the Liberian people what this compact is about and what it's going to do. So misinformation, misconception, and limited knowledge of the projects amongst communities is one of the constraints we've met, challenges. A lack of community willingness to participate in the projects, and unrealistic expectations of some of the communities. And these are on a little, on the minimum scale.
Excuse me, I see two things here. One, the lack of will by some communities to cooperate, and then the ones that are cooperating have some unexpected, about what to expect from them.
Right, and let's just a little elaborate on that. Well, so everybody knows that the U.S. government gave $257 million. Some people misconstrue this to be the money is sitting here in UBA or some bank that MCA, Zeon, myself, or our CEO, Monique Captain, can just go and take the money and put it in his pocket and walk away. But that is not what's happening. So when the U.S. government gives you a grant, the grant is actually not in the country. You have to have a multi-year financial plan, first of all, that explains how that money is going to be used. And then you have to make quarterly procurement plan and submit to them. They approve the plans of the projects you want to run, and then the monies are allotted specifically for those projects that have been approved. So let's say for this quarter you are conducting or implementing a project that costs $5,000. It is only that $5,000 that will be given off the $257 million to you. When you've completed that, then you have to submit a project report and another request for additional money for new projects you plan in the other quarter. So that's how that's going. So once you show up with the MCA vehicle and everybody thinks you are carrying a lot of money. So things that normally people would pay $25 to get, people will expect you to give them $250 because you have $250 million. So those little in and outs of kind of high expectations, but we've been able to manage that by a lot of engagements of the community. In fact, community is getting involved now in the kind of projects we are running. From the stakeholder perspective, from the planning stage, we are involving community participations in all of our projects from the beginning to the implementation and the evaluation part of it. So that in its term is managing the kind of expectation people have. Like Zeon just told you, Yesterday, we concluded with the stakeholders, some community organizations and private sectors group, the Liberian Marketing Association. They were all there in our gender-based, gender and social inclusion workshop. They managed to understand the concept of the grants, projects that are within the grants, how is it going to be implemented, and all of those activities. So the more we get to engage the community and provide them these kinds of information, the better it is for us, and it, in the long term, actually reduces, minimizes for better choice of word, the kind of challenges that we just listed up to you. So we are working on those.
Let me go back to you guys, because it seems like a communication thing that people may not be understanding what they say, because they're hearing about the money, so they just think becoming a community. So what are you as communication head doing now to ensure that the people get to understand better the workings of this?
I think it's a legitimate misconception that people are having. We have a responsibility to explain to the public what the processes are, what the procedures are, who we are, what we intend to do, and how we can be able to address those concerns. So yes, so this is what we're doing. We have put in place a communication strategy to engage community members, especially those affected by the projects, stakeholders and policymakers, as to what the MCA is about. There's a question of the two levels of communication. One is building a realistic understanding of what the company is about, what the deliverables are about, what we are expected to do, what government is expected to do to help us achieve what we need to do. And then the second level of communication is to communicate the implementation progress of the project themselves. If I may, there is a third level that we need to communicate the processes of issues of administrative management, the question of how the funding is done, the question of how do we award contracts, what are the procedures. So yes, community members do have legitimate concerns. They need to know, because after all, like the CEO always said, this is, a grant provided by the American government. Yeah, because it belongs to the people of Liberia. So we are on our obligation to explain to them. We are accountable to them. So we have a vibrant strategy to reach out to the public. We are contracting, developing a partnership with all of the community radio stations. So we ensure that our directors will go on these shows to explain to the people on a regular basis that we are doing now. We have our website, which is very actively updated on a daily basis, I can say. We have our LinkedIn, we have our Facebook. You will see our videos of our directors explaining the programming, even the Chief Executive Officer himself. You go on the YouTube, you see our videos, people explaining about what we are doing. So there is a lot in community engagement. Like we speak, Paul and I will be going to the Voice of Rural Montserrat this evening to talk to community, because the radio station in Bentor is close to Harrisburg, where the Mount Coffee Hydro Power Plant is located. So we will be talking to people in that community as to what are the projects we are undertaking, what we expect from them, what MCA is, what MCC, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, is, what are the support that we are providing, and how we can work with community members. So there's a lot, and it's a very detailed process of how we intend to engage the people of Liberia, both at the policy level and on a very grassroots level. And we're trying to make that effort to explain our processes and our procedures.
Okay, that's the voice of Alphonsus Zeon, who's Director of Communications and Outreach, Millennium Challenge Account-Liberia. You also are hearing the voice of Paul K, Director of Environment and Social Performance. Also, it's downtown. We interact with you out there. Of course, you can call us on 080 if you have any further, maybe some other questions you want to clear out. They are the best people to sort of give you the sort of information that you're looking for. So you just hit us up on the 08804-31818. That's 08804-31818. Especially those communities within the specified area, like around the Mount Coffee and other areas. the airport has been affected by the hydro, the development of the hydro. Hello, good morning. Okay, so go ahead, tell us your name and where you're calling from. Okay, Mr. Joseph Paul K, go ahead. You have to speak, just speak up a bit so we can get you clearer. So you see, Alphonsus, your tax is huge.
Yeah, it's very huge, and we will continue to do the engagement.
Okay, 080431818. That's the number to call us on. 080431818. As he explained, you know, most often the conception of the people. That you're talking about, like he was just saying on the line, they are not seeing you, they want to see you in a way. Probably you get to their communities and call a town hall meeting and say, okay, we are from the Millennium Challenge Account-Liberia, and we came here to give you this or give you that. Probably that's their concept. That's how they're thinking.
But
let me just squeeze in this call that's coming.
Yes.
Good morning. Okay, so go ahead, tell us your name and where you're calling from. Okay, Zoe.
Let me use this opportunity to thank the comrades in studio there. I think they're doing extremely well. This is why we told the Liberia people in time past that it depends how you vote. You see, the whole government has left.
They're not political talking
here. Some of the positive outcomes of the whole government are still continuing with the Millennium Challenge Compact. Now, like I'm worried because, like you said, it comes to an end 2021. Now, if it comes to an end 2021, even besides the maintenance you're talking about, yeah, that's another important aspect. But let's look at how prepared is our current government to attract the Millennium Challenge Compact to come back or to renew that. That is worrisome. That's why we told the people. And we were late to them.
Come on. I know how you want to sound. Okay, let's talk about that.
Well, I was trying to address the last caller issue about us not being visible. We want to clarify that, of course, the compact activity has a target community, especially for the energy sector activity. And I just named talk about 22 communities within Mark office. So the gentleman who called, if he really doesn't live around that area, he might not be able to begin to see some of the impact or appreciate some of what the Millennium Challenge account has done. And like Zeon said rightly, we were partnering with other groups. The LEC had a management group called the Project Implementation Unit, PIU. We don't implement projects ourselves. We give the monies to organizations that will implement those projects. People who live in that community can tell you they have wells now that was erected in those communities, over 17 different wells in the community. They built bridges. I talk about roads that are being renovated or rehabilitated in that area. We even went to the extent of buying 10 fishing boats that we've given those communities for crossing, and some of them now they are using to be fishing and getting that. So in the community area, you're going to see our visibility. You're going to see some of what we are doing there.
Okay, I think that's more cost. Let me take up this call.
Okay.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's say you, Mr. Wade.
Okay, well, I listened to the guys and the several things, and let me be very honest with you that the community around the Alphonsus Zeon Paul K community that benefited from the MCC project of Georgia, I found it difficult to believe and I found it difficult to understand. That's what the issue that I've been there for the whole maintenance. Children, I would like you to take a class on among us to see how to do
Okay. They're going to address that. Yep, you heard him.
Yes. Can I speak to a few things? One, I mean the comments of the first caller underscores the importance of the need for continued communication of our projects. Within these comments are good because we are accountable to the people of Liberia. We need to explain to them what is it that we're doing. We also want to make sure that we match communication with implementation. Like Paul said, the question of community participation in the project implementation of the compact is very important because it builds skills, it brings income to the community, and it's a question of national ownership. So we will continue to do more in explaining what we're doing. We want to make sure that the people understand and they can appreciate. But not only that they can also get involved in making sure that these projects are sustained and that they are fully supported.
Okay, the voice of Alphonsus Zeon, the Director of Communications and Outreach at the Millennium Challenge Account, and of course Paul Kennedy is the Director of Environment and Social Performance, also at the MCAL. Okay, thanks a lot for showing up this morning. We hope we do this most often so that our people get to know the real function of what you do here.
Thank you very much.